Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi Shabbos Daf Samach Vav. We're at the Mishnah at the bottom of Samach Hey Amud Beis. Says the Mishnah, Hakiteya yoytze bekav shloi. One who's a kiteya, one whose foot was amputated, he may go out on Shabbos wearing this kav, this wooden clog, which is there for cosmetic purposes to hide his situation, hide his blemish. So it's not really worn as a shoe because he's actually using crutches to transport himself. It's merely there for cosmetic purposes, and since it's a wooden shoe, we have a machlokes. Can one use it on Shabbos? Can one wear it in Rishus Rabbim on Shabbos or not? Says Rameh, he could. Hakiteya, the amputee, yoytze, he can make out in Rishus Rabbim, bekav shloi, with his wooden clog. This is the sheet of Rameh. Let's perhaps take a look at Rashi here. This is the bottom line in Rashi. Masnis and Hakiteya, says Rashi, shenikto ragloi, whose foot was amputated, yoytze bekav shloi, he may go out with his kav. Even though it's made of wood, generally speaking, the more prevalent material for shoes is leather. It grips the foot properly. It's considered to be the appropriate material used for shoes. In this case, says Reb Meir, although it's made of wood, he can use it on Shabbos. Why? Yoytze bekav shloi, says Rashi, the minal dideyu, because it's his shoe. It's considered to be his minal, even though it's not your typical type of shoe. Nevertheless, it has a halachic status of a shoe, and it may be worn on Shabbos in Rishus Rabbim. We don't look at it as a masu, as a load. Rather, it's like his garment, like his accessory, and is bottled to the person and may be worn. Continues the Mishnah up on the Samach Vav Amar Aleph. Rabbi Yosi Oyser, Rabbi Yosi says it's not allowed. Why? Let's take a look at Rashi up on the first line. Rabbi Yosi Oyser, says Rashi, Delav Tachshatu. It's not regarded as an accessory. Rabbi Yosi maintains that a shoe is meant to be made of leather, and this wooden shoe, it doesn't constitute a shoe. It's not considered to be an accessory. Rather, we look at it as though he's carrying something, carrying a masu, a load, and therefore he cannot wear it on Shabbos in Rishus Rabbim. Now, once again, we're speaking about the type of shoe here that he's not really using for support. As Taisus explains, he's using a crutch to transport himself. So this is there for cosmetic purposes, and therefore, according to Rav Yosef, we don't regard it as an accessory, and it's considered to be a load. Continues the Mishnah. If this wooden clog, this thing that's shaped in the form of a foot, has a base kibul ksisin, has a capability of being mekabel, accepting within it ksisin, some rags or some cushions. So it has a place where you can put these things, which are placed for the comfort of the person, because he puts his leg in there. So if this wooden kav has a capability of accepting, of being mekabel something, it's regarded as a klei kibul, as a utensil as a receptacle, and therefore it is mekabel tuma. It's considered to be a klei kibul, because otherwise it's not mekabel tuma, because Rashi points out pshutei klietz, a simple klietz which does not have the ability to contain something within it, is not mekabel tuma. So once again, this kav, this wooden clog, if it has a makom for kibul of these ksisin, of these rags, it is mekabel tuma. Now Rashi points out, although it is actually being mekabel the person's foot, the person's wearing it on his foot, so why don't we regard that as a kabbalah? Says Rashi, no. The wood which is being mekabel the foot is not considered to be, it's not as though he's containing the foot. Quite the contrary. It's the foot that is holding wearing this wooden clog. So we don't regard the clog as though it's being mekabel the foot, unless, once again, there's the base kibul for these ksisin, for these rags. Continues the Mishnah, Smoichei shaloi. What if we have a double amputee, one who has both legs removed, and now he has these supports, these leather supports placed on his legs, and they're placed alongside his legs, over on his knees, which he uses for support when he transports himself. So he rests on his legs, which contain these supports. Tmei and Midras. These supports are Tamei, not only Tmei Mace, but rather also Tamei Midras. Now Tamei Midras literally means trampling. It means that something which is used to support one's weight, for instance, a chair, a bed, etc., can become Tamei, a unique tumah called Tumas Midras. If a Zav would rest on these things, even if it doesn't directly come into contact with them, these things become Tamei, a very stringent form of Tumah, an Avatuma, provided that they are designated for this type of function to sustain a person's weight, to support a person. Says the Mishnah, these supports, these smoiches, these leather wrappings around his foot, which are there providing a function of support for the person who rests on them when he transports himself, they can become Tamei Midras. In this case, all agree one may wear these things on Shabbos. As Rashi says, the Tachshid Deyu is regarded as his accessory because he's actually using them for support. Finally, what else? One may enter the Azora wearing these smeichas, these supports. Now, although generally one is meant to remove his shoes prior to entering the Harabayis, the Azora, on account of kavod of the Beis Hamikdash. Nevertheless, these smeichas, these supports, are not regarded as shoes, and therefore one may wear them even in the Beis Hamikdash. Why? Explains Rashi, because a nal, for something to be considered classified as a shoe with regard to the halacha of removal when entering the Beis Hamikdash, needs to be a nal which is placed at the roish ragle, at the head of his foot, at the bottom of his foot. These supports are not positions at the head of his leg. They're alongside his leg, and therefore they're not regarded as shoes when it comes to the halacha of the Beis Hamikdash. Continues the Mishnah with a third example of an amputee. Kisei. What about a person who's in a more desperate situation? He has more difficulty transporting himself on account of the fact that his legs have become shriveled, his tendons have become dried up. He can't even rest himself on them, support himself on his legs when he transports himself. He needs to have this kisei, this accessory which looks like a chair strapped to his back, which he sits on, which he leans on while he transports himself by propelling himself using his hands, which have these crutches, these short bench-like crutches attached to them. So he propels himself forward using these accessories. Now, in addition to that, he also has some leg supports for the fact that sometimes he actually leans a bit on his legs as well. Says the Mishnah, Kisei, so this individual who has this chair, what is the halacha of the smeichai shaloi, of his supports? Rashi says they're either leather or wooden supports. Tmei and Midras. They are regarded as items which are meant to sustain his weight, since sometimes he will lean on his feet as well. So these on his legs. So his leg supports are regarded as things which are Tamei Midras, which can become Tamei when leaned on or sat upon by a Zav. However, one may not walk out on Shabbos interested around wearing these leg supports. As Rashi explains, since these things are dangling, they're not really firmly placed on the ground. Since in this case his legs are dangling, and therefore there's a concern that these things, since they're not really so firm, they might fall off and be carried in Shus Rav. Finally, one may not enter the Azor with these leg supports, with these foot supports, because they are placed at the head, at the roish of his shoykov, of his legs, and therefore, in this case, they are regarded as though they are shoes. They have the status of classified as a nal, and therefore is forbidden in the Beis Hamikdash. Finally, says the Mishnah, Luktimin. The Gemara will describe exactly what this is. We actually have three versions of this item. These things are tahir, and they're not mekabel tumah, because they're not considered to be a klei tashmish or a tachshit. They're not regarded as a utensil which provides a significant, prominent form of function and provides and does a task which is considered to be significant enough to regard it as a kli tashmish, and therefore they're not mekabel tumah. One may not walk out in Shus Rabbim wearing these items, this luktimin item, as will be described in the Gemara. So in summary, the Mishnah gave us three different classifications, three different categories of individuals, amputees, who require different forms of apparatuses, and they have different halachas. We began with the kav, with this wooden clog, which is a piece of wood shaped in the shape of a foot, and it is used for cosmetic purposes. So this kav of eights, we have a machlekes regarding Shabbos. According to our mayor, he can wear it on Shabbos. We regard it as though it's his shoe. According to Rabbi Yossi, it's aser. With regard to kabbalah tumah, if it is mikabel ksisin, if it accepts within it these rags, the Mishnah says tamei. Now we will see soon in the Gemara that there's actually machlekes what type of tumah is applicable in this case. According to Abayi, it can become tamei, all types of tumahs except for midras. According to Rava, it can be makabel tumas midras as well, as will be explained in the Gemara. The Gemara does not, the Mishnah does not discuss the halacha of entering the azara with this kav. It's actually a discussion in Taisus and Yuma. Taisus has two sides to this coin. On one hand, he says perhaps all agree it cannot be worn in the azara, or on the other hand, perhaps all agree that it may be worn. That is discussed in Taisus and Yuma. Let's move on to the next category, these smeiches, this double amputee who needs these leg supports, which are placed alongside by his legs and by his knees. So these supports may be worn on Shabbos. They're regarded as his takshitim, as his accessories. They're makabel tumas midra, since they're meant to be leaned on. He uses them when he transports himself. He rests his weight on them. And in the azora, they may be brought. They're not considered to be shoes, since they're not placed at the ends, at the tips of his legs, and therefore they're not regarded as shoes when it comes to entering the azara. We have the third category of this person who's a double amputee as well, but in this case he needs the kisei, this chair to propel him, and he also has these foot supports for his feet, which are not really firmly placed on the ground. They're dangling. In this case, it is asa to do so on Shabbos for concern that these loose supports may fall off and be carried on Shabbos. These supports are tamei medr, since occasionally he does rest on them, and one may not enter with them in the azara because on account of their position at the head of his, the bottom of his stump, they're regarded as shoes. They're classified as a minol and may not be brought into the azara. One must remove them prior to entering. Continues the Gemara. So we began with the machlekes regarding the kiteya, wearing his kav. Rameh says it's mutter. Rabbi Yossi says it's aser. Amalei Rav Nachman. Hey chitnan. What is the proper version, the proper girsa in this machlekes in our Mishnah? Meaning, do we begin by saying Rameh allows, Rabbi Yossi prohibits, or perhaps the reverse? Rameh is the one who says aser. Rabbi Yossi is the one who's matter. Which way are we meant to go? Hey chitnan. What is the proper version of the Mishnah? Amalei Dana. I don't know. Hilchasamai. Which shita, which view does the halacha follow? Amar leidan, I don't know. Itma, we learned Amar Shmuel eina kiteya. The halacha in the Mishnah is meant to be read as follows: eina kiteya yotze b'kav shaloi. This is the opinion of Rabbi. Rabbi Yossi says it's mutter. So according to Shmuel, we reverse the names. V'chein Amar Rav Huna eina kiteya. The Mishnah begins by saying a kiteya, an amputee, may not wear this kav. According to Rabbi Yossi is the one who's matter. Amar Rav Yosef, Hoyel v'Amar Shmuel eina kiteya. Since Shmuel maintains that this is the correct version, v'Amar Rav Huna eina kiteya, they both adopted this version. Anan nami, isn't this the eina kiteya? We too will follow this approach, and our girsa will be accordingly. Rav Meir is the one who says that a kiteya may not wear this kav on Shabbos. Rav Yossi is the one who's matter. Maskef lo Rava bar Shira. Lo yishmielu. They did not hear this following episode. Hada masnilei Rav Chana bar Rava. This that Rav Chana bar Rava taught. Who did he teach? He taught Chia bar Rav, Chia the son of Rav, Kamei the Rav, in the presence of Rav, of his father. Where did this take place? B'kituna, in this small room, the Bei Rav of the Beis Medrash of Rav. So what did he teach him? As follows: Eina kitei yoytze b'kav shelo. He began by saying a kitei may not wear his kav. Divrei Rav Meir, Rabbi Yossi mater. So indeed he adopted this version, which is compatible with Shmuel and Rav Huna. Umachvilei Rav efach. Rav, who was present here, indicated to him, no, he meant to switch things around. It is Rav Meir who allows, and Rabbi Yossi who prohibits. Omar of Nachman Yitzchak. V'simana. If you want to have a simon to remember, who says what? Samach, samach. That Rabbi Yossi, who has the letter samach contained in his name, he is the one who says asr. The word asr contains the letter samach. So it's actually the way we have it in our Mishnah. Rabbi Meir is the one who says mutter. Rabbi Yossi is the one who says asr. Continues the Gemara. V'av Shmuel hadaber. Even Shmuel reverted. He changed his mind and he reverted to our version. That Rabbi Meir is the one who says mutter, and Rabbi Yossi says asr. This not as we learned. Cholza binal she'nishloid. Mishnah talks about the halacha of chalitza. If a man passes away without leaving any children, so his wife is a yivama, the living brother of the husband needs to do either yibum to marry her, or chalitza is performed with the yivama. This woman will remove a sandal from his foot. This is the process of chalitza. Now, what if she was chaylet? She removed the sandal that didn't belong to him. He was wearing the sandal that belonged to somebody else. Is this considered to be okay or not? Or besandal shel eitz, they used a wooden sandal. Or shel smoil biyamin, they used a sandal which belonged on the left foot, the left-footed sandal, and it was placed on his right foot. Since we know that chalitza is meant to take place from the sandal worn on the right foot of the man. This is learned from a Gzeir Shav, as Rashi brings. So what if he didn't have the right-footed sandal and he used the left sandal and placed it on his right foot and they did chalitza in that manner? Is it kosher? Says the Mishnah, all three cases, whether it wasn't his, he didn't own the sandal, it was a wooden one, or it was on the wrong foot, kshera is considered to be a proper chalitza. V'amrinan, and we said, man tana, who's the view here, who's the tana reflected in this Mishnah that holds that even a wooden sandal has a din of a sandal, even though it's not made of leather, which is a typical material used? Who is this Tana? Amar Shmuel. It's actually Reb Meir. The Snan, as we learned in our Mishnah, Hakiteya yoytze b'kav shaloi. An amputee may go out wearing this wooden kav. David Reb Meir, who maintains that is considered to be his minel. It has the classification of a shoe, even though it's made of wood. Rabbi Yossi Eiser, Rabbi Yossi says it's made of wood, it's not considered to be a shoe. So here we see clearly that Shmuel's version in our Mishnah was compatible with the Girsa that we have, which is that Reb Meir was the one who said mutter, and indeed his shita, his opinion, is reflected in that Mishnah, which considered a wooden sandal to be a proper sandal. Says the Gemara, V'af Rav Huna hadabrei. Also Rav Huna reverted, changed his mind, and he came back to this version of the Machlekes. The Sanya is went in the price. Sandal shel sayadin, a sandal worn by a plaster seller. So he wears it to protect himself from the hot plaster. He places it, according to Tosfos, he places it over his shoes. It's meant for protection purposes. Now, if it's made of wood, nevertheless, tamei midras. It is tamei midras. Why? Because it is performing like a shoe. V'isha choletzes boy, and a woman can use this for chalitza. V'yoytzim ba b'Shabbos, and it can be worn on Shabbos. So we have three halachas. Number one, it is tamei midras. It has the status of a shoe. It's meant to sustain one's weight. It has the halacha of a ordinary shoe, and it's tamei midras. Number two, chalitza can be performed with this wooden shoe, wooden sandal. Number three, it can be worn on Shabbos and Rosh Hashanah. Divrei Rabbi Akiva. This is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, who maintains that even a wooden shoe is fully considered to be a bona fide shoe, a bona fide sandal regarding all these halachas. But others didn't agree with his opinion. Says the Gemara, V'atanya hoydiloi. We learned in the Brayso that they did agree with him. So how does this work? Who did agree? Who didn't agree? Amar Pun, I'll explain. Depends who you're speaking about. Man hoydiloi, who agreed with Rabbi Akiva's assertion that a wooden clog, a wooden sandal, a wooden shoe has a din of a shoe? It's Reb Meir. Reb Meir in our Mishnah, who allows one to wear this wooden shoe on Shabbos. Uman lo hoydiloi, who disagreed with Rabbi Akiva? who held that something made of wood does not have a din of a sandal or minel, it's Rabbi Yosi, who holds in our Mishnah as well that this wooden shoe may not be worn on Shabbos. It doesn't have a halacha of a minel. So apparently Rav Huna also reverted to our version, to our girsa, that it was Rav Meir who says mutter, Rav Yosi who does not regard it as a minel, and he says it's also to wear on Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Rav Yosef Amar, I have another approach. Man lo yehoidoloi, Rav Yechim ben Nuri. It was actually Rav Yechim ben Nuri who disagreed with Rav Akiva. He holds that when something is fashioned using material which is not your typical material, it doesn't have the halacha. This nan, as we learned in the Mishnah, kaver shal kash, u'shvefer shal kanem. So the Hagoyis Hagra has a girsa, machzeles hakash, a mat made of straw, u'shvefer hakash, some sort of cylinder made of straw. Now, ordinarily these things are made of using reeds. So one uses merely straw, which is flimsy, not your typical material. Rabbi Akiva Matami, he says, is considered to be a full-fledged kli and is makabel tum, although it's made from straw. Rabbi Yechim ben Nuri Matar, he says, no, we don't regard it as a kli, as a utensil, since it's made of this flimsy, this straw, which is not typically used for these items. So here we see clearly that Rabbi Yechim ben Nuri maintains that unless you use the proper material, it doesn't have the halacha. It's not regarded as a proper utensil. Therefore, says the Gemara, this was Rav Yosef speaking, that I found a Tana, Rav Yechim ben Nuri, who disagrees with Rabbi Akiva's opinion stated in the Mishnah, in the Brisa earlier, that a sandal shel sayadin, this plaster maker's sandal made of wood, is regarded as a full-fledged shoe or sandal. No, Rabbi Yechim ben Nuri maintains, since it's made of wood, it's not appropriate material for that type of kli, and therefore is not regarded as a shoe. Continues the Gemara, Omar Mar, we just learned, sandal shel sayadin, this sandal worn by the plaster seller, tamei midras, can become tamei on account of midras. If it is stepped on by a Yezav, it becomes an avatuma, because apparently it's designated for this type of function to be used as a shoe. Says Gemara, really? How lovely, luchul avdi, it's not made to be walked with. It's merely there for protection while he's handling his plaster. So since it's not designated, it's not intended to be used for this type of function, for walking with it, for sustaining his weight, it doesn't have the category of, it's not classified as something which is tamei midras. Says the Gemara, Omar of Acha bar of Ula. Yes, indeed, it is performing this function. It is meant to be used as a shoe as well. Shekain hasayod. This fellow, this sayed who's selling this plaster, metayel boy, he would walk with this shoe until he gets home. So since it is also used as a shoe, it's not merely there for protection. He uses it while he walks home. Therefore, is regarded as a shoe and can become tamei tumas medras. So in summary, regarding a sandal made of eights of wood, we have three ramifications, three manifestations of this type of halacha. One is regarding Shabbos, can be worn in Shus Rabbim. Number two, can be used for chalitza. Number three, is it tamei tumas medras? According to Rav Meir and Rav Akiva, yes, we regard it as a full-fledged shoe. According to Rav Yosi and Rav Yechim ben Nuri, we don't regard it as a shoe, and therefore it doesn't have all these halachas that a shoe would have. Continues the Gemara. Getting back to this piece of wood shaped as one's foot, and it's used for cosmetic purposes for the amputee, the giteya with his kav. The Mishnah told us that if it has a base kibul, ksisin, it can receive these rags, these cushions, it is tamei. Now, what type of tumah can it be makabel? We have machlokes Amar Abaye, tamei tumas meis. It can be makabel all types of tumahs, for instance, tumas meis. Ve'ein tamei midras. It is not tamei tumas medras. Why? Since tumas medras needs to be an item which is designated for this type of function, to be used for sustaining one's weight, for carrying one, to lean on it, to sit on it, etc. This type of wooden kav is not meant to be leaned on. It's there merely for cosmetic purposes to hide his blemish, and therefore, although it is makabel tumas meis, why? Because it's a kli kibul. It contains these rags. Nevertheless, it is not tamei tumas medras. Rav Amar, of tamei medras. It can even become tamei tumas medras, since this amputee sometimes actually leans on it. So even though it's not a constant function, it's not performing this task on a regular basis, since occasionally he leans on it, that is sufficient to be regarded as a kli which is makabel tumas medrus. How do I know this concept that something which is occasionally used to support one's weight is regarded as a kli regarding tumas medrus? This nan is learned in the Mishnah. Agola shel katan, a wagon used by a katan. Rashi says he uses it for playing, and sometimes he actually leans on it or sits on it. Tosfos learns, we're speaking about a walker, that the katan uses it to train himself to walk. So he uses it as a walker, and sometimes, and since Tosfos explains, since he also leans on it, we regard it as something which is designated to sustain, to support one's weight. And the Mishnah tells us it is tamei midras. Agol shel katan tmei midras. Says Rava, apparently even something which is not, its primary function is not to support one's weight, to have somebody sit on it. It's merely something which is done occasionally and is sufficient to be makabel tumas medrus. In our case as well, this kav, this wooden shoe shaped piece of wood, is considered to be tamei tumas medrus because occasionally he leans on it. Says the Gemara, Abaye responds by saying, "Abaye Amar Hasam Samech Liya." Over there, indeed, is meant to be leaned on, even though it's not its primary function. But it is pretty common that the katan will lean or sit on this thing. Hach, in our case, like Samech Liya, it's something which is very rare, and therefore it's not regarded as a kli for tumas medrus. So Rava maintains even an occasional use is regarded as a tumas medrus. According to Abaye, it needs to be something prevalent and common. Amar Abaye, how do I know that something which is not meant and designated to sustain one's weight is not makabel tuma? Even though occasionally, on a rare occasion, a person will lean on it, that's not sufficient to grant it a status of a kli which is susceptible for tumas medrus. How do I know that? Where do I know this from? The Sani, we learned in the Bryce. Makal shel skenim, a walking stick used by elderly people, tar miklum, is completely tar. Why? It can't become tamei through a mace, etc., because it's a pshute klietz. It's a simple rod of wood. It doesn't have the capacity to be makabel, to receive, to contain. Therefore, it is tar. And regarding tumas medrus as well, it will not be makabel tumas medrus. Says Abaye, why? Apparently, even though occasionally he leans on it, since it's not designated for that function, it's not designated to lean on it, to trample on it, to sit on it, is not becoming tamei tumas medrus. So this is my raya, that although something occasionally perhaps will be used to sustain one's weight, to support a person, nevertheless, since it's not primarily designated for that, its primary task and function is not to sustain, to support, it is not tamei tumas medrus. The Rava counters by saying, no, Hasam, in that case, it is absolutely not designated for leaning and supporting one's weight. Merely the terutze, sugya avida. It's intended litrutzi, to straighten out. Sugya, his strides, avida. That's what it's meant for. The elderly man who's somewhat insecure and wobbly, it's meant to simply straighten him out, to secure his steps. And certainly not meant for him to lean on it or to sustain his weight. Therefore, according to Rava, in that case, of course, it won't become tamei tumas medrus, since it's absolutely not designated for this type of use. However, says Rava, in our case of the kav, this wooden clog which the amputee wears, since at least occasionally he will use it to support himself on it, that is sufficient to regard it as a kli which is roy to makabel tumas medrus. Concludes Rava, over there it's merely to straighten out his steps. However, in our case of the kav, in our Mishnah, it's meant, it's designated to lean on it as he's transporting himself, and indeed he does that. Therefore, it is makabel tumas medrus. So in summary, regarding be makabel tumas medrus, for instance, if a zav should lean or sit on this item, it will become an avatuma, even if it doesn't actually touch it. This is the unique tumas medrus. When does it apply? We have a Mishnah which tells us that regarding an agola shel katan, this play wagon used by a miner, as Tosfos calls it, a walker, this can become tummy to Mesmedus since he occasionally leans on it or sits on it. What about the makil shel zaken, this walking stick of the elderly man? All agree it is tar. Now the agola shel katan seems to be an item where the katan frequently leans on it, frequently sits on it, and therefore all agree that it is tummy to Mesmedus. Even Abaye, the makil shel zaken, Abaye maintains that occasionally it's used to support oneself. Rava says it's never used for that purpose. Therefore, all agree, in this case, that it is not tummy to Mesmedus. The machlokes is by the Kava Keteya in our Mishnah, which is on rare occasions perhaps used for leaning and to sustain his weight. According to Abaye, that's not sufficient and is not tummy to Mesmedus. According to Rava, yes, that is sufficient to grant it the halacha of Tumas Medrus. Continues the Gemara. Tamei in Midras, ve'in yoytzim mem b'Shabbos, ve'in echnosim mem lazor. We're speaking about the third category in our Mishnah, which is the person who needs this kisei, this chair strapped to his back. He propels himself using these sort of crutches attached to his hands, and he also has these these leg supports, these smoichos, which are wrapped around his feet. The Mishnah told us that they are Tmei and Midras, since he occasionally leans on them. They cannot be worn on Shabbos, since they're loose and they perhaps will fall off. And finally, they may not be used in the Azara. One must remove them prior to entry of the Azara, since they're placed at the bottom of his stump and they constitute a din of a minnow. Continues the Gemara. Tani Tana Kameder Rav Yochanan. So this Talmud Chacham, the scholar who presented this brisa in front of Yochanan as follows. He said the brisa states Nechnosim el Azara. These supports, these smoichos, are allowed in the Azara. We don't regard them as shoes. Amar Lei, Rav Yochanan responded, that can't be so. Ani shayna isha chaletzes by. I learned that an isha can use this for chalitza, meaning we regard this as a proper shoe. And you suggest that one may wear it in the Azara? Certainly not. Tani, you meant to learn, amend your brisa as follows. They may not be worn in the Azara because they are regarded as full-fledged shoes. Continues the Gemara. This was the final halacha mentioned in our Mishnah regarding these luktamin. Luktamin is tar. This object called luktamin is tar. It's not regarded as a kli. It's not makabel tum. We have three interpretations. My luktamin. What exactly is this luktamin? We have three descriptions. Amar avo chamra de achfa. It is this. The clowns would use this donkey-shaped thing to evoke laughter, and this was a chamra, a chamar which was worn, somehow hung from his shoulders, and it's not considered to be a functioning kli. It's not performing a real function, and it doesn't have the din of a kli tashmish or a tachshit, and therefore is not makabel tum. Rava b'papi Amar kshiri. These are these stilts which are tied to the person, which enables him to traverse the makim tit, this muddy area. It steadies him, allows him to walk through that area. So these things are not makabel tumah, because they are considered to be pshutei kliyates, simple pieces of wood, rods of wood, which have no capability of being makabel anything, of containing something. Therefore, they're not makabel tumah. We have a third pshat, Rava, but Rav Huna Amar Parmi. Parmi means that it's a face mask. So this too is not regarded as a kli, and is not makabel tum. Continues the Mishnah. Habonim yoitzim b'ksharim. The young sons may go out in Shusarabim wearing these ties iksharim. The Gemara will explain exactly what this means. Ubnei melachim, the children of kings, royalty, bezugin may go out wearing bells on Shabbos. Certainly we're speaking about bells are stuffed up and not emitting any sound. They're allowed to wear it. It's considered an item of ornament for them, a tachshit, and therefore they're allowed to wear this. So the Bnei Melachim, members of the royal family, the children of kings, may do that. Says the Mishnah, not only them, v'chol adam, any person is allowed to do that, any yid. Ella shedibru chacham b'heva. Chachamim refer to something prevalent, which is the Bnei Melachim, who are accustomed to wearing these bells, these golden bells, Rashi says. But certainly any person can do so if he chooses to do so. Says the Gemara, the banim yoitzim b'ksharim. What does that mean? My ksharim, what type of knots are we speaking about? Omar Adamari, Omar Nach Babaruch, Omar Avashi, Bar Avin, Omar Yehuda. What type of ksharim? Kshurei pua. We're speaking about this knotted plant called pua. So we take this plant, tie it up with a couple of knots, as we'll see soon in the Gemara, and hang it around one's neck. And this will somehow provide a remedy for an illness. Rashi says, "Lo yadati le'zechoyle." I'm not certain exactly which specific illness it would come to cure. So this may be worn by the banim Rishus Rabbim. Amr Abai, Amr Ali Aim. My mother told me. Actually, it wasn't his mother. Aim here is referring to his nursemaid, since his mother passed away during childbirth. So Abai says, my Aim, my nursemaid, the one who raised me. We find this many times in the Gemara that he quoted his Aim, this nursemaid, who gave him pieces of advice. Here too says Abai, my Aim told me as follows. With regard to these ksharim, these kishrei pua, she gave me specific instructions how we're meant to use it. Tulasa mukmi. If one makes 3 knots, then it is effective to the extent that it can contain the illness. It doesn't cure it, but it contains it from spreading, from becoming more severe. Tulasa 3 mukmi contain it. Chamisha. If one proceeds with 5, he makes 5 knots, masu, it can actually cure and heal this illness. Shiva. If he makes 7, afilu l'kshafim mali. It's so effective. It can even ward off sorcery. It can protect him from kshafim. So depending on how many knots you do on this plant called pua, that's how effective it is. 3 merely contain the illness. 5 actually cure it. 7 is so powerful, protects a person from kshafim. Omar of Achabar Yaakov. You meant to know that there are several restrictions here that are required. There are several conditions that must be met for this kesher to be effective. V'hu the loichazi leishimsha b'sira, provided that it wasn't exposed to the sun nor to the moon. V'loichazi mitra, this bundle, it wasn't exposed to, it didn't see any rain. V'loishmir leikol barzela, and wasn't exposed to a sound, the clanging of barzela, of metal, of steel, of iron. Vikal tarnagota, or the sound of a hen. Vikal nigri, or the sound of footsteps. So there are many conditions that must be met for this thing to be effective. Amar Nachmar Yitzchak. If so, you gave me so many conditions, it's not practical. Nafal puta babira. Rashi says puta is referring to this poor plant that's fallen into the pit. It's useless. If so many conditions need to be met, it's not practical. It's not going to happen. Says the Gemara, okay, so this is the Pshat in the Mishnah, that the banim, the sons, may go out wearing these ksharim of this plant pua for healing and curing purposes. And that's not considered to be a load on Shabbos, since he needs it. It's considered to be like his tachshit, it is batal to the person. Says the Gemara, but why specifically banim? Why are you banim? If this is used as a cure, as a remedy, I feel like banis nami, even daughters, even girls. Why do you specifically relate this type of practice to banim? Why specifically young ones? I feel g'doyim nam, even adults. Ella rather, says the Gemara, my ksharim. It must be that the halacha of ksharim is something else. My ksharim, what is it? Ki ha de Omar Abin Baruna Omar Av Chama Bar Guri. He explained as follows: Ben, a son, sheyesh le gagun alaviv. He has yearnings to his father. It's difficult for him to separate, to allow his father to leave. So what does he do to calm himself? Noitel ritzua miminal shel yamin. So he takes, perhaps it's the father that takes noitel ritzua. The father takes the shoelace from his right shoe. Ritzua miminal shel yamin, the right shoe of the father. And he ties it. He ties a shoelace on the left hand of his son, and this somehow alleviates this emotional distress. So this is specific to banim, to young sons, who have this special affinity to their father, and they need this for their emotional health. The Mishnah tells us it can be worn on Shabbos, even in Rishus Rabbim. Omar of Nachmar Yitzchak, v'simonach, in order for you to remember exactly how to do this. What is this simon? Tefillin. It resembles tefillin, where a person takes the tefillin with his right hand and ties it on his left hand. So this resembles this procedure done here as well. Continues the Gemara, if he switches it around, he takes the left shoelace and places it on the right hand, it's a sakana because it actually will aggravate the son's emotional state even further. Continues the Gemara, Omar Abin Barhuna, Omar Rav Chama Bar Guria, Schufi Kasa Ataburi B'Shabbat Shabbos. This is some sort of a therapeutic procedure where they would take a cup which contains steam. For instance, Rashi says it had some hot water which was spilled out, now contains steam. So one will use this for a situation where his intestines got moved out of place. So they would do this procedure to restore to put back the intestines in their proper location. Schufi kasa, overturning a cup which contains steam, atibur on one's navel, b'Shabbat on Shabbos. So this steamy glad, the cup would somehow suck get a hold of the intestines and allow them to maneuver to the right place. B'Shabbat, doing this on Shabbos, Shabbat is permissible. Then first explain how is this compatible with the halacha that one may not engage in remedies and refuah on Shabbos. So the first explain, as the Rambam explains, that something which is a painful situation, a person has sar pain, he's allowed to engage in certain types of therapeutic practices which don't involve medicines. Let's remember once again, what is the isser of refuah based on? There's a chashash that a person might, out of desperation or forgetfulness, might go ahead and grind up the herbs, the samamonim, the ingredients required for the medicine, for this potion, which is the Issa Deraisa. So therefore the Chacham forbade any form of medicine on Shabbos. However, a procedure, which never involves taking any medicine or potion, for instance, this case of this overturned cup, in this case, the Gzera doesn't really apply, and as Rambam says, in the case of Tsar, it's allowed. So therefore this is allowed on Shabbos without any concern. Continues the Gemara, another example of a therapeutic practice which is allowed on Shabbos, since it doesn't involve any taking of medicine. Says Gemara, Omar Abin Barhuna, Omar Rav Chama Bar Guria, Mutar Losach Shemen Umelech b'Shabbos. One may anoint himself with oil and salt. The Gemara will say it's done on the palms of the hand and the bottoms of the feet, and it's done in order to alleviate intoxication. That might be done on Shabbos, even though it's a form of therapy. Ki ha, as we find the Rav Huna, Rav Huna returned from his teacher, who was actually Rav. When Rav returned Rav Chia, from Rav Chia, who was his teacher. Rav Chia, when he returned Rebbe, when he returned from the Beis Medrash of Rebbe, who was his Rebbe. Ki havu mivsimi, when they returned and they were intoxicated, Rashi says that they would give their students to drink wine to intoxicate them. The Madur Basra explains the reason is because through intoxication, through becoming shikar, they had the ability to comprehend the depth of Torah. So on occasion they would do this. And when these Talmid Chachamim would return in a state of intoxication, so how would they relieve this intoxication? Maisi. So they would bring, other people perhaps would bring mishcha or milcha. They would bring the oil and the salt, v'shayfilu, and they would smear the gviyasa, the yadayu, the palms of their hands, or gviyasa, the karayu, on the bottoms of their feet, to alleviate, to have this intoxication dissipate. V'amri, and they would chant as follows. They would say the following statement, which seems to be a sort of a chant, which has some sort of spiritual effect on the intoxication. Ki eichi, the tzil hamishcha, just as when we're rubbing this oil, the tzil, it thins and it becomes clearer as a result of being rubbed into the person, as a result of the warmth. The oil becomes thin and clear. Just as this is happening, leitzil chamre de pari rapanisa, so too it should have a corresponding effect on his wine. Leitzil chamre, his wine, his intoxication will become clear and thinned out and dissipate. The chamre de planya, of this person, bar planisa, the son of this planisa, this woman, of this mother. So they will apply this, the oil and the salt, and also chant this phrase. Says Marviloi, what is an alternate way of relieving intoxication? If he doesn't have access to these ingredients, what else can he do? Says Gemara, there's actually another option. Maise shia de dana. He takes the lid of the chavis of the barrel, v'shorli b'maya, and soaks it in water. V'amar, and he says as follows: Ki yechad elitzel hayshia. Just as this lid is becoming clear, cleaning up through the water that it's being soaked into, so just as this is happening to the lid, it's clearing up and cleansing. Leitzel chamri de palio planisa, the chamri, the wine of Planio bar Planisa, this person, the son of this woman, should also thin out and dissipate. Continues the Gemara, another form of therapy which is mutter on Shabbos. V'amar abin barhuna amar of chamar guri. Mutter lechonek b'Shabbos. One may strangle somebody on Shabbos. This is one for therapeutic purposes. Rashi explains a person's vertebrae has jumped out of its location. So they would seek to stretch his head. They would hang a person by his head, which would stretch out his neck, so that everything falls back into place. This is mutter on Shabbos, once again, even though it's an act of therapy. Nevertheless, since it doesn't involve potions or medicines, it's mutter in a situation of pain, of tsar. Another example of a refuah which is mutter on Shabbos, B'amar abin, barhuna amar avchamar guri, lefufi, yunuka b'shabbata, straightening out, wrapping the newborn with white straps, b'shabbata on Shabbos. Why would they do this? To restore his avarim, his limbs, put them back in their proper location, since they became displaced through the childbirth experience. That is allowed on Shabbos. Shaper dami, that is allowed. Says the Gemara, Rav Papa masni banim. Now we have two discussions regarding things that are applied through two procedures, which are applied to sons. One was the one we just mentioned now, the lefufi nuka, the strapping of the newborn baby. And previously we discussed the ksharim, that the banim wear the shoelace on account of their emotional distress. So we have two discussions regarding two procedures applied to banim. And Rav Papa related both of those teachings in the name of the same Amor, in the name of Abin Bar Huna. Rav Papa Masni Banim, he applied both of those sayings to Abin Bar Huna. Rav Zvid, however, Masni Ben, he only related one of those to Abin Bar Huna. Elaborates the Gemara. Rav Papa Masni Banim, Tarvayu Masni, both of them he related Abin Bar Huna, that the man the Amar was Abin Bar Huna. Rav Zvid, on the other hand, Masni Ben, he only related one of them to Abin Bar Huna. Kamaisna, the first one, the previous one, the one with the Iksharim, Masni Abin Bar Huna, he related to Abin Bar Huna as being the man the Amar. Vahai, but this most recent one regarding the Lifufi Yunuka, wrapping of the baby, he related to a different Amira Rabba Baracham. The Amar Rabba Baracham, Yulufi, Lifufi Yunuka b'Shabbat Shabbir Dami. Strapping of the baby on Shabbos is allowed. Continues the Gemara, Amar Abai, Amar Li Aim, my aim told me, Kol Minyani, all these different repetitive chants which are recited during these therapeutic procedures, all these chants, how many times are we meant to chant them, and whose name are we meant to mention? Amarli A, my aim told me, Kol Minyani Vishmadim, all these chants are meant to relate to the mother, meaning you say, as we said before, the wine of Pliny, the son of Planisa, this woman, so we're meant to make reference to his mother. V'chol Kitri Bismala, all tyings are meant to take place on the left side. As we said before, the shoelace tied to his left hand. V'amar Abai, Amarli A, my aim told me, Kol Minyani, all these chants which are repeated. The Mefarshi, when a given number is stated, Mefarshi, meant to follow instructions and chant those amount of times. But the Mefarshi, however, when there's no number given, how many times we're meant to chant the phrase Arba'im v'chadzimni, 41 times. Tan Arba'im went in the Bryce. Yoitzin be'even tekuma. A woman may go out in Shusharam wearing this unique stone called Even Tekuma. Tekuma means it maintains, it contains what? Her pregnancy. It protects her from miscarrying. B'Shabbos, she may wear it even on Shabbos. It is serving a purpose. It is being Meshamasher, is considered as though it's a tachshit. Some Mefarshim describes this as being a stone within a stone. So just as the stone is contained and safely secure within the other stone, it's just the way it naturally, it's a natural occurring phenomenon. So too, it's meant to maintain a pregnancy by containing the uber, the fetus within the isha. So this is allowed. Meshumra Mei Amru, the name of Rameir, they added another chiddush. Afi mishkal Even Tekuma. Not only the actual Even Tekuma may be worn, even something which is a counterweight, an item which was weighed against the Even Tekuma in a scale, it too becomes endowed with these special powers to protect the Isha and may be worn on Shabbos. Continues the price. Not only an Isha already has prior experience, already miscarried, Not only she may wear this Even Tekuma, Elo Shema Tapel. Even an Isha who's concerned that perhaps she will miscarry, perhaps it's a tendency in the family, she is also allowed to wear this Even. Not only Isha who's already pregnant, who knows she's already pregnant, Elo Shema Tis'aber V'Tapel. Even Isha who's concerned that she might become pregnant and then miscarry, she can wear this Even Tekuma on Shabbos. Amar Rav Yemer Bar Shlami Mishmei Dabai. V'hu, this is what we said, that a Mishkal Even Tekuma is something which serves as a counterweight. For the stone is endowed with these special abilities. It's only V'hu provided the Chavin V'Iskal, that when you weighed it, it perfectly equated the weight of the Even Tekuma without needing to remove from it or to add to it. It was something which naturally corresponded to the same weight of the Even Tekuma. In that case, we know that it is endowed with the same powers. Barabai Mishkal de Mishkal Mai. What about a counterweight to a counterweight? Meaning, you took something which was weighed opposite the Even Tekuma and was endowed with these special powers, and you weighed something opposite that on a scale. Does the power transfer to that as well, or not? Take it, we leave it unresolved. My aim gave me another piece of advice, another therapeutic procedure, as follows. One who's experiencing a daily fever, what is he meant to do? Should take a newly minted coin, and should go ahead to the place where they make the melach, the salt. This was the ponds where they would have the salt water evaporate, which would leave behind the deposits of salts. Go over there. He should take some salt. He should take salt, which corresponds to the weight of this coin. And he should wrap the salt under his neck, benira barka, in a strand of hair. And this will serve as a remedy for his condition. But if he doesn't have access to these items, we'll give him another option. He should sit at the crossroads. When he sees this large ant, Shimshon is this ant gamla, a large one, the Dori Midi, which is carrying a burden on itself, Lishkale. He should take this ant and place it in a tube in a copper tube. Close it up with lead. Seal it with 60 different types of seals. Rashi says 60 is not necessarily 60, but a bunch of types of sealed wax over a pitch, etc. Just seal it and seal it. And you should shake it. And carry it on himself. And address the ant within. Say as follows: your burden, I'm accepting upon myself. That should be transferred to me. Utunoi, my burden, meaning my sickness, Allah, should be transferred onto you. Don't do this. Why? The Dilma perhaps. Another person has already found this ant and used it to transfer his illness on it. He has already terminated his illness using this ant. And now when he addresses this ant and he says, your burden should be transferred to me, perhaps he's inviting this illness which is present on the ant onto himself. So don't use this language. Ella lema lay. Rather, you should say as follows: Tu'nai, my burden, my sickness, u'tu'nach, and your burden, Allah, should be transferred onto you. V'loi, but he's not able to do this procedure. We actually have a third option. Lishkol kuzeh chadata, should take a new earthenware container, a small container, v'leizel nahar, and go down to the river. V'leimeli, and address the river as follows: Nahar, nahar, river, river. Oizvan kuza demai, lend me a container full of water. Le'urcha, to this routine, meaning for this fever, the iklali that has come to me. V'lahadar shev zimni al reish, and then he should take this container full of water and rotate it 7 times around his head. V'lishdai lachar, and afterwards he should spill the water out behind his back. V'leimalei, and again he should address the river. Nahara, nahara, river, river. Shekoil maya, take back the water, obviously that you've given to me. The urcha, the ikali, this routine that has visited me, that has come to me, this fever, b'yoymi asa, he came today, or b'yoymi azl, and today he already left. Let's take a quick chazara of today's daf. We began with the halacha of a kiteya, one whose foot was amputated. We have 3 categories. We have this kav, which is a wooden clog. According to Rav Meir, it's mutar on Shabbos. We regard it as a minol. According to Rav Yossi, it's aser. We have these smeiches for the person who is a double amputee. These leg supports. According to all, it's mutar to wear on Shabbos. We regard it as his accessory. Regarding the smeiches for the person whose feet are dangling. In that case, it's asur. We're concerned perhaps these supports will drop and will be carried in Shus Rabbim. We continue with the halach of Tumas Medris, that a child's wagon, all agree, is Tamei Tumas Medris. Since it is common for him to use it, to lean on it, the walking stick is not. What about this wooden kav for the amputee? According to Abaye, it's not Tamei Tumas Medris. According to Rabbi, it is, since occasionally he would lean on it. We finalize with a list of different types of therapeutic practices which are mutter on Shabbos. For instance, the banim, which will go out wearing these shoelaces. One can smear the oil and the salt to alleviate intoxication. Lechanek, to stretch this person to restore his vertebrae. To wrap this newborn child. And finally, regarding this Even Tukuma that an Isha may wear to protect herself, to maintain her pregnancy and prevent from miscarriage.